Well, okay, welcome everybody. Hopefully everybody's in to our 2025 how-to clinics. Looks like Ron's going to be up casting and developing a heavyweight passenger car.
Here when I load up stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Launch time. Launch time? Here we go. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
What?
Good. All right. I was going to tell you about developing a heavyweight passenger car in 1/32 scale, and I can look out in this crowd and see nobody cares. 1/32. Who else is in 1/32? Okay, good. We should talk later. Maybe lunch. It's lonely. So I morphed the presentation into, next slide, problems with large castings. How do you cast resin in large pieces? There are a lot of modelers out here. Any experience with casting in resin? Just a little bit, right? How big, what's the biggest piece? 8 inches? Yeah. So I started my casting experience with HO scale Milwaukee Road ribside cabooses. How many here have ever seen a ribside caboose? Well, anyway, they're very expensive because they're only in brass, $300. Then you got to paint it. And I needed, for a display I was doing, we needed 6. So we were going to have to raise that much money. And I said, no, I can figure this out. So I figured out how to make the masters, and I started casting them. Somebody heard about it, because I bragged, and said, send me one. So I did, and he assembled it and then painted it and then wrote an article and published it in the Milwaukee Rotor, and suddenly I had a whole new job. We sold 250 of those little castings, those little kits in 19 weeks. And then Walter said, hey, we're gonna build one too. And the sales stopped. Thank God. So I was out at Pete Conley's house and was watching somebody who shall remain nameless run his nice big 210-2, and his first passenger car was shaved off to match the height of the cab ahead. And Pete says, 1/32 loco, 129 passenger car. And I said, nobody makes 132 passenger cars? He goes, no. And I said, well, can't be too hard. A year later, I took Peter, the first one, and said, hey, will this work? He says, hot damn. And he sold 20, well, actually, we had orders for about 48 cars at a price of $699 each. Okay, so at the second production of 10, I kept track of my time, and I almost got to 3 cents an hour. I came this close. So I gathered in some experience in dealing with large castings. And so I want to talk about what worked, what didn't work, and answer questions. So if we get all the way through that, we can actually talk about some of the ins and outs of casting resins. You want to do that? All right, next slide. One of the biggest problems you run into is the weight of the mold, because they're just big and they're heavy. And then I discovered that in casting the roof, there was so much resin involved that it would slop to one end of the tank or one end of the mold, and the other end wouldn't fill. And so I started doing things like adding more resin to the mold. And the other thing is, how many are familiar with pressure casting? If you pressurize, next slide, under pressure casting you can remove bubbles. And we'll cover that in a second. One of the things is pot life, or how fast can you mix your resin? And we're starting to talk about cups and cups of resin that you have to stir up, and then you got to get it into the mold, and then you have to get it into the tank to pressure. So you got to look for resins that have long enough working time that you can get all that done, or you end up with your stir stick stuck in a cup and becomes a paperweight or goes in the garbage. One of the things that I did to speed up the process is that the resin you buy in a 1-gallon jug, go to the guys that produce beer, you know, the home brew stores. They make these cool little spouts that screw right onto the jug. And you can lay the jug on its side, push down the spout, goes into the cup, onto your scale, and you can speed up the whole process when you're dealing with that much. And then you got to use 3 cups. Put your resin A, B, and then a mixing cup, because you can reuse the A and B cups again. Next slide. So that's what one of the passenger cars looks like after it's all done, lettered, even has flexible diaphragms on the ends. What do you think? $700 a piece? How many can I get? Anyway, next slide. So when I was building the roof, it's a lot of resin. So I would have to pick up the mold, which is as long as this roof, and pour all the resin in. It's a 2-part mold, so I have a bottom and a top. I then have to pick it up, and then I have to put it inside the tank, screw the lid on, get the pressure hose on, get the pressure up to 50 pounds in less than 120 seconds. It got hard. I went through so much resin, I probably had about 12 or 14 rejects before I got one part. I ended up having to level the tank, but then I was talking to another expert. They said, what about adding micro balloons? Anybody here work with micro balloons? You did? Yeah.
Fiberglass on the boat.
Micro balloons.
Used it for fill.
Use it for fill. And what it did was it increased the viscosity of the resin so it wouldn't slopping back and forth in this long, skinny mold. And so I brought a sample of micro balloons. That was one of the easiest things if you have a very large mold that has a lot of resin in it, is just to increase the viscosity because it doesn't slop around. And the other cool thing about the car is, where's the center of gravity on that car? Is it high or low? It's real high. And so they had a tendency to just go down the track like this, which was kind of cool, except in a model it looks kind of funny. So I actually made the roof lighter and moved the center of gravity down, and you could tell the difference between the first production car and the second production car just by how it tracked. So that was a big, and then leveling the tank. Oh yeah, leveled the inside of the tank, not the outside. Next slide. I was building mold box and how to hold this rubber. And the rubber is about 18 to 20 pounds of rubber. And so I built my first box out of styrene. It flexed. That's not gonna work. So I grabbed plywood. It worked a lot better, stiffer. Had to make a whole new mold because the 2 boxes didn't hold each other. But then after the first casting, I couldn't get the resin off the plywood. It stuck really good. I would use my belt sander to clean up the mold after. And I was just adding one more step to the whole process. So then I built a tray, which, next slide, there it is. And what I did, I built it and I covered it in Formica, and the other I used an epoxy paint, and then I would paste wax it, and the resin wouldn't stick.
Mold release.
Well, I was going to use mold release would work, but that stuff was like $18, $20 a can, and paste wax was $3, and I still have the same $3 can of paste wax. Never going to use it up.
It's a couple microns.
Yeah, you just smear it on the end, so it gave me the ability to pick up the mold, put it in the tank, and that tray fit exactly inside that tank. This is a setup I use. This is my passenger truck, freight truck mold setup. And by putting the 2-part mold and using these pull downs, I got exactly the right amount of pressure to put the mold back together. Because if you over pressurize, what happens? You're going to squish the mold, and your parts are going to be the wrong size. So I did that on the big tray. So I built 24 roofs without a reject, not counting the first 20 that I threw away. Next slide. I moved on to freight cars because after making 3 cents an hour on passenger cars, I needed freight cars because I can't buy 1/32. So that's the freight car over there. But one of the things I needed to do was I needed to make the walls really fast. And so in the passenger car, I learned that you can actually take the walls, instead of casting them horizontally, you could cast them vertically. And the advantage to casting vertically is, well, the resin goes in, but the air comes out. And all the walls on the freight car and the passenger car have detail on both sides. So you don't have a side that you can lay down because all your air floats to the top. And so all your defects are on the top side, which is on the wrong side. You don't need defect. But if you set it vertically, as your air passes out of your mold, you can actually let it go into a piece that you're going to cut off or break off or throw away. Yay! Next slide. So there's that car with the wood roof walk. It didn't work. First rainstorm, that thing turned like curly ribbon. It was really a waste of time. So I'm trying to get the styrene roof walks to work. My goal is to have 20 of those cars in various road names, which is a lot of casting, but it works. Next slide. There's a master. It's kind of hard to see, but can you see the wall is gray? And then you've got the sprue where the resin would pathway come into the bottom and then go up through the part. Next slide is a close-up of the sprue, the coming down from the top and then the corner. See how that works? Now I've got 2 of those walls inside this mold. And what I do is this mold comes out. Occasionally.
It's got,
There it comes.
Well, yeah, don't do it this way. What I did was I put guides to make sure it would go in back into the box in the same position, but it doesn't come out very easily. When it's full of resin, it comes out. So now, there's a wall, there's a wall. And because it's tapered in 2 directions, it's held tight. What hit the floor? Oh, yeah. The neck, which is right there, I've got a little adapter that fits in there. And you ever see a rubber funnel? Oh, I love these. They clean up. You don't have to worry about it. I just pull it off and throw it on the table. Fill it with resin. Pour it in there. Pop that off, and it goes in the tank.
so how do you know when the walls are both filled and to the correct?
Oh,
dimension?
good question. How big of a crack or a slit do you think resin that has the viscosity of water will pass through? How small?
Very small.
Well, yeah, it'll go through your shirt. That's a pretty small hole, right? Okay. So, because it's split, it will bleed resin right up through that crack when it's full, because I have whole 4 inches of pressure on it. See how that? And as long as the funnel is full, it's going to be filling this. When do you stop pouring stuff in there? When it comes
It
out.
starts bleeding out.
When it starts bleeding out, pick this up and dribble all the resin across that's in here, there, so it doesn't go on the floor. Pick this up, put it in the tank.
How quickly do you have to do that, Ron?
I'm still at 120 seconds. Yes?
You're doing an indirect pour, right? Going down, it's coming up.
Right. I have tried molds pouring from the top, like the doors. I cast those vertically, and they're side by side in the mold. I just hold the mold up with one hand, split it open a little bit, go get enough in there, and then I just let go. The thing just drops into there, crushes shut, resin squirts out the top.
Do you ever get like air bubbles down at the bottom when you do it that way?
You know why? It goes in the tank. How big? A 1/8 inch diameter bubble that would form out here on the table. If it gets in the tank and it's still soft, it will disappear. That's the reason you go to pressure. Put your castings in a pressure tank. Got it? Next slide. So that's what I did. Got it?
Yeah.
All right, next slide. So there it is. Nice pictures. That's for later. Yeah.
What material are you using for the mold? Is that just a silicone?
Yeah. Yeah, this is platinum catalyzed RTV, room temperature vulcanizing. Next slide. Here are the most important things to think about is if you're going to do large pieces, get yourself a tank. Does anybody recognize what that tank's made from? Harbor Freight buddy tanks and a paint pot. It helps to have somebody that has a really good welder and some time. Let me give you a clue. Don't do it that way. Because as it turns out, we bought 2 buddy tanks from Harbor Freight exactly the same day, and they're different diameters.
Probably from 2 different countries.
They were painted the same color. I couldn't tell. But what you do is you just go get a paint pot. I think it's a 2.5 gallon size, about $100, and you cut the bottom off, and you have somebody roll you steel to the exact correct diameter, maybe even a little over diameter, and overlap it on the welds, that sort of thing, and you'll be just a whole lot happier. And put the feet on it. That was my idea. He says, nah, but the feet are helping. They gets it done. How much time do I have? You want to learn about casting in general?
Yeah, if you could do maybe about 5 or 10 minutes.
5 or 10 minutes.
Yep.
I think I have 40 more slides.
The next few slides are going to come fast and furious, so you can pause this video at any point to read each one fully.
Not going to make it?
I do, so I feel better.
All right, next slide. When you're talking about casting, these are some of the things you have to think about. And there's 2 important decisions in that whole big long list. One is what kind of rubber am I going to use, and what kind of resin. So maybe we'll just, this hat goes through a whole bunch of things. Next slide. Next slide. Here you go. I found this is a decision tree on the rubber, but it can come down to just 2 simple questions. One is my part dimensionally critical? When I get done, is it going to fit? Or are you casting figures that you really don't care what size they come out? Then you have to decide between a tin and a platinum catalyzed rubber. Tin catalyzed rubber is the stuff you can buy at Hobby Lobby, and it's very inexpensive. And it will shrink. It will shrink a bunch. And so if you're casting multiple parts that must come together, then you don't want to use tin. Don't ask me why, I know. You're going to buy the platinum stuff, okay? So we got rubber out of the way. After that, it's how soft, how hard it is, what's the tear strength, how many parts are you going to pull. When I was making the little cabooses, I used very soft rubber because the way I molded them, I took the mold and I had to unfold it to get the part out. So if you can take your part out and then lay it on some flat and surface and let it go back to normal, then you can use a harder rubber which will last longer. But if you got to take your part out and you don't want any deformation at all, then you have to use a softer rubber. There you go. We just covered rubbers. Do you have to cut that one out too? Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. Shrinkage, durability, smell, viscosity, and temperature in the environment. So we covered shrinkage. If you're making critical parts, then you got to get the stuff that'll shrink 1/1000th of an inch per inch. So on a 32-inch model, it shrunk 32/1000ths of an inch, which is how far? How big? 1/32nd inch. How many of you guys can spot a 32nd of an inch from 10 feet? Now, there we go. There we go. Done with that. Durability, hardness versus brittle. Mechanical engineers. Were you mechanical? No. Oh, good. Because what I found was that from 4 feet and concrete, that passenger car would shatter. But one of the things that we were worried about was the temperature of the environment. How many here leave your trains outside on a hot sunny day? Yeah, okay, fine, yeah. I was worried that you'd leave that out there and it would turn into a puddle. It doesn't. We tested it. I sent a car side down to my friend in San Antonio, and we left it on his roof for a year. Guess what? Nothing happened. Right resin. The other thing is smell and viscosity. There are some resins out there, kind of in the epoxy lines, that will, the vapors will kill you unless you're in your shop using a respirator, because this stuff is really nasty. So I'll tell you right now, you don't need to use those. Just don't even, if it says use respirator, don't even bother. Viscosity. How are you going to get the resin into the mold? A thick viscosity is easier to use on an open mold than a thin one, my experience with the roof. But you need a thin one to get it in a mold like this. So how are you going to, so check your viscosities. Next slide. Next slide. Here you go. There is I found this really interesting. It's called Guerrilla Guide to CNC and Resin Casting. It's on the internet. There it is. Get it, read it. It's full of really good information, or you can buy the guy's book. One of the other. Those are and he's talking about model trains. So this is exactly what you're looking for. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. There it is. This environment thing. The experience I had was one of the first model cabooses I sold. The guy, we shipped it to Florida, and I should have put a warning on the outside of the box. Will cause cancer and don't leave in the sun. Because he left the kit in his car trunk for a week. And then he calls me up and says, hey, it's all warped. I sent him a new body, whatever, and I still have the one. I mean, it just collapsed in on itself. It's just terrible. But then I changed resin. So onward. Next slide. Next slide. Consider two-part molds for everything you do. And here's, next slide. Have you guys ever seen something like this? That's how you can make a mold box using a part. Next slide. This shows the part. Next slide. There we go. Now it's up there. See the yellow end? That's actually at a 90 degree to the, but the white end is actually tilted at a 15 degree. So using 4 parts, you can make a square something and flop the other ends. It'll make a tapered, 15 degree tapered square something. And you can make it in various sizes. So there's the sequence to actually use those same 4 parts to first make the clay up for the top half. You put down your clay, work your master into the clay, put your thing around, pour your rubber, that's your bottom half. Take the 4 pieces off, move them out, turn them in for in to 15 degree, and then you can pour a resin over the top of that, and that gets you your mold box that fits your mold. Then, keeping that all together, you just lift it up, turn it over, use your pieces, go back to the square, and you can pour your top. And one of the secrets is, next mold, and build them in. I have 23 inches, and I use them all the time. Next, clay. Do you understand my terminology? When you're claying it up, I get one. The old style way is you take modeling clay that is doesn't bother the RTV rubber. It's non-sulfur based. Well, it's almost all modeling clays now. Almost are all non-sulfur based. But there is some stuff. It's called. And I brought this up. This is soft, rubbery. I use this for my clay instead. And what I do is you put it in the microwave and it melts. Gets to about 180 degrees, and you pour it. And while it's still soft, you can take your part and you can kind of wiggle it down into it. Or if, like me, I forgot, so when I came back and it's cold and what part wouldn't go in, so I grabbed my heat gun and I just warmed the surface until it was able to get in. How do you reheat this? You put it back in the microwave. And if you look at this, it's got all kinds of stuff in it. Yeah, who cares? If you really want it clean, all you gotta do is push it through some window screen and then throw the window screen away. So I brought this along. And that's what I use for clay instead of clay. And it's so much faster, quicker. RTV doesn't stick to it, your resins don't stick to it, and you pick it up and reuse it.
Is there a specific name for that?
Next slide. It's called Flexi Mold or Composi Mold. You can look those up. Those are the only two. Now, on eBay, I found a guy that would sell you 10 pounds of that for 15 bucks. And I bought that 18 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. And still haven't used it. You don't throw it away. You just keep using it over again. Next slide. There you go. That's why you use pressure molding. Next slide. Those are some lids. I actually have 3 pressure pots. I have a big one and I have 2 little ones. And you can use your pressure pot to, some of the rubbers that you'll get have to be de-aired after mixing. So you have to get the air bubbles out. So you'd use a same pressure pot with a vacuum, and that lower right is my vacuum lid. Made it myself on my bandsaw and my router table. And the seal is RTV rubber that I just happened to mix up a little tiny batch, poured into the crack, made it sure it was nice and level, smeared it out. Oh, and you got to replace it? Pull it out, pour another batch in. Away it goes. Next slide. One of the things about, you'll hear vacuum casting, and what they're actually doing is putting the mold into a lower pressure area and then pouring the resin in. So on this mold, we would figure out how to put this all under a vacuum and then start pouring the resin in. And what that does is you're using your 14 psi atmospheric pressure to force the resin into the mold. Will you still get air bubbles? Maybe. It's not the way to get air bubbles out, but it is a way to get a very viscous resin into a very tight mold. Once you do that, if you can get it out of the bag and get it into your tank, pressurize it and the air bubbles will go away. So it's a way of forcing resin into a mold. Next slide. There you go. That's everything you have to decide on when you go to cast resin. Pretty easy and straightforward, right?
3 cents an hour.
At 3 cents an hour, almost, this close. Any questions? Go ahead, Bob.
So the whole idea of this was to make 129, 1 to 20.
1/32. Get it straight.
Yeah. So doesn't MRL make a lot of 1 to 32 stuff?
Stuff, but not in 1920 era.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. See, Astor just came out with the Great Northern Light Steam engine. And so they built 300 of those engines. And the only other manufacturer of passenger cars, the cars are $22,000 to $3,000 a copy. They're all brass, and you can run them for 10 minutes and go back up the track and pull your detail parts out of the gravel. Because the solder joints are all just crap. And so that was your other option. And so you would see these guys, you could buy the 129 cars that weren't prototypically, they were big and they didn't have the right number of windows. And you go over and inspect that car. The car has that model has the same number of rivets as the real car. No, I don't know how many rivets are on there, so I never counted them. Any other questions? What?
3 cents an hour.
Not for 3 cents an hour, yeah. All right,
So why did you go through all this effort to do this?
because I couldn't buy what I wanted.
People don't make them.
People don't. I kind of like S-scale years ago. It was real cool. They made locomotives, but they didn't make cars. So I have 4 steam engines at home. Alice has 2. All my steam engines are in 1/32 scale. Alice is in is what? What are Idas and Rubies? I don't think they're scale. They're sugarcane train engine. Bob? All right.
Alrighty, so Jerry's already done his, so the last one looks like Mark with his engine carrying case.